Alright guys, Season 5, Episode 10, the 98th episode of the series overall, was such an incredible episode of My Hero Academia. This was one of those perfect adaptations that just took the source material, the manga chapter, and took it to that next level, and I love it. We firstly began in Tartarus with none other than All for One. He was apparently stirring a bit and would regard this bodily response to him hearing the voice of his younger brother once again. And he had been stirring this way since the day before, which was when Deku had his one-for-all dream. The connection between these two quirks certainly still being very much intact. Now, two guards would speak about him a bit here, which he somehow heard, but what was interesting about this was that they can't exactly sentence him all too lightly. They don't know exactly what to do with him. They can't even execute him because he may very well have many people that still believe in him, many faithfuls that are sleeper cell agents of sorts within the country. And so to purge him in his way would be dangerous, as it could potentially cause some sort of uprising or instability within the system that could not exactly be foreseen. And hell, I don't blame them. This guy has people like Giganto Makia on standby, going dormant for who knows how long. But from there we would transition back to the Class 1A versus 1B joint training battles, as All Might would receive a call from Gran Torino. And Gran Torino would then begin to speak of One for All and his recollection of Shimmer Nana. And I have to say that this man Gran Torino is reckless, because he is just out here talking about Midoriya, One for All, Shimmer Nana, all this stuff out in the open as people are walking past. I don't know if that's the most secure channel then. But he would convey to All Might a recollection of Shimmer Nana expressing within a dream that she once had that the time has not yet come. Which is to say that the time will come eventually, and it seems as though that time is now here. But again, the fifth and final match of this joint training battle was underway. And prior to engagement, Monoma and Shinso would have a rather interesting conversation with one another, as they both aspire to be heroes. However, on account of their quirks, there is a sort of social stigma against them. For one to be a hero, it is expected of them to be ever heroic and have those sorts of gold shining virtues at all times. However, in the case of Monoma and Shinso once more, they don't exactly have that luxury. And if they decide to do that, then they won't be able to win out against people who have the power to do just about anything with their quirks, to be those sorts of beacons. I mean, you have Monoma, whose quirk is inherently theft-based, and Shinso, who needed to egg on a response from Deku as he insulted his classmates to get him to become vulnerable to his power. And I like this side of Monoma. I feel like this is his best moment thus far for me. When he's around Class 1A, he's kind of just a jerk, he's kind of just ridiculous. It's more comedic, but here he's expressing kind of who he is. And that sentiment about your hopes and dreams from when you're young slowly becoming a burden and then a curse was very fascinating to me. I feel like that can apply to a whole lot of things in this series, and is perhaps a perpetual sentiment of Horikoshi himself, or at least one that he intends to convey with the story. But past this, we would have the consideration that Deku's team, albeit balanced like Bakugo's, was lacking in the scouting department. And in the place of this, we would have Deku just rushing around, and once again he is trying to be the decoy. And the first person that he would run into would be Monoma, who would just continue to berate him and attempt to get him to speak, or not even do so, but get him to question his ability to speak, whether or not Monoma may have taken on Shinso's quirk or not. There were a whole lot of mind games going on here, and once again, Monoma was being a bit underhanded with his approach, which he just spoke about. And honestly, you can't blame him based on what he has to work with. And if it's effective, it's effective. And I mean, come on, Eraserhead's not exactly the poster boy for a smiling hero, so I think it's okay. But in actuality, it would be revealed that Monoma had copied Emily's quirk, Poltergeist. And from here, Class 1B would make their respective moves across the board. Furthermore, Monoma would do his best to get under Deku's skin by doing as Shinso had during the sports festival and begin to talk down on Bakugo. He would question how Bakugo was able to smile so nonchalantly after having been captured by villains and then being responsible for the fall of the symbol of peace. A very low blow, one that Bakugo was reeling with and dealing with for quite some time. And this easily made Deku upset. Deku, honestly, I question if he has anger management issues, because For him to have even been caught up by Shinso's power in the first place back during the sports festival was just baffling to me, considering he knew what Shinso was capable of, but that alone was enough to get him to just disregard everything. And this anger would elicit a response from the quirk One for All, as from Deku, darkened tendrils would escape. Finally, here we have it, my friends. Deku is raging, and I love this sort of thing. When it comes to anime characters losing control and going crazy haywire with their powers, that is just like one of my favorite tropes there is, and so this was great. The sense of vulnerability that Deku felt was enough to bring him to tears, which isn't exactly an achievement with this guy, but at this point in the story, he felt as though he was finally getting the hang of his power. He was finally making One for All his own. But with this, he'd lose control and in a sense revert to his inferior self. His quirk was harming him and running the risk of harming others. And the last thing that he wanted was for anyone to be worried about him. And this power was just raging like crazy, destroying everything in the vicinity. It was ridiculous as Uraraka would jump into his aid. And as far back as she could remember, Uraraka had always admired heroes, and even more than that, she admired the feelings that they elicit in the populace, the smiles that they provided to the people. But in seeing Deku and observing the trials and tribulations that he has been subjected to, she would come to question, when a hero is struggling, who is there for them? And so in this sense, her dream has now shifted to becoming a hero of heroes. She was doing all that she could, but he was not stopping anytime soon. But in recognizing Shinso, she would call onto him to help and stop Deku from raging out by using his quirk to brainwash him. And thankfully this would work, as the quirk would cease and then swirl back inwards. As from there we would yet again have Deku within the world of One for All. From here, Deku would meet and communicate with one of the past users of the quirk, and this was some prophecy, some chosen one philosophy sort of vibes here, and it was rather interesting. It felt like a very different sort of story all of a sudden. Going from the Class 1B and Class 1A battles to this was pretty epic. And I'll tell you, as a manga reader, this sort of feels a bit surreal. This is a very important moment. This is a pivotal moment for the progression of Deku as a character and the story overall. Considering, I mean, it's not a spoiler or anything, it's self-explanatory. The fact that he is going to be receiving 6 more quirks, that just changes the game entirely. One for All is a whole lot more powerful than anyone had ever surmised in the story thus far, and so this is a major change. This man would then say that the name of this quirk is Black Whip. And in fact, thanks to the power of One for All, this quirk has been augmented well beyond its prior capabilities in the hand of this previous possessor. And clearly from the visuals of it raging, this is a very powerful quirk. But I could sit here and talk about that quirk for ages, so instead we will have a video up for you guys explaining it in its entirety. So be on the lookout for that. Now past this instance, let me tell you, I lost it. I was just dying of laughter. Uraraka just slapped the dog mess out of this man Deku to wake him up. Oh my goodness, she put force and emphasis behind that one, man. And let me tell you, man, these animators, they did not play any games. When it came to this scene between Uraraka and Deku, it was not like this in the manga. Don't get me wrong, it was not like this in the manga. Here, man, I can already see the fan cams coming through. The shippers are living for it. And this, I mean, this is just a beautiful scene overall. This looks really good and is a reminder as to why, even though you may consume one form of media, you may consume the manga, there is reason to come to the anime because this is just a really good adaptation. But just as they were having this touching moment where Deku was concerned for Uraraka and her safety in regards to his quirk potentially harming her, Monoma and the rest of his goons from Class 1B would not waste any time and would jump in to just go crazy. This conduct was not sportsmanlike at all, but I can't blame them. They don't really know what's going on and they just entered the fray, so it's to be expected. Now All Might, like a mother concerned for her son at soccer practice, would urge Vlad and Eraserhead to stop the match, but now that things seem to be a bit more under control, they would allow it to continue, as we would then be able to see the conclusion of this match and the joint training battles in general with the next episode. And again, this was a really good episode. I'm imagining a whole lot of people who have been sleeping on season 5 thus far may decide to jump back in because of this instance and what is to come from here. I of course enjoyed the Class 1A versus 1B joint trading battles for what they were. You've been able to see that through these videos, but I understand where some people are coming from in waiting a bit and letting them accumulate. But what do you guys think about this? Finally, the manga readers don't need to hold and bite their tongues when it comes to Black Whip. So yeah, we can rejoice about that. Leave us all your thoughts on everything in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on. Right now, we have a giveaway going on over on Instagram and Twitter at PlotArmorYT, where you have your chance to win every single volume of My Hero Academia or every single volume of Black Clover. So if you've yet to dabble into the manga and are curious as to what comes from here, especially with such a huge revelation, then this is probably a really good opportunity to possibly get some manga. And furthermore, leading up to the conclusion on June 5th, we have been giving away manga over on our Twitter page. Just any singular volume of any series that the winners want, we've just been throwing those around. So if you want to engage in that, you can do that as well. Again, at PlotArmorYT, because when it comes to bringing you some of the best My Hero Academia content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.